The Lord be with you. Reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. When Jesus heard of the death of John the Baptist, he withdrew in a boat to a deserted place by himself. The crowds heard of this and followed him on foot from their towns. When Jesus disembarked, he saw the vast crowd. His heart was moved with pity for them, and he cured their sick. When it was evening, the disciples approached him and said, "This is a deserted place, and it is already late. Dismiss the crowds, so they can go into the villages and buy food for themselves." But Jesus said to them, "There is no need for them to go away. Give them some food yourselves." But they said to him, 5 loaves and 2 fish are all we have here." Then he said, "Bring them here to me." And he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he said the blessing, broke the bread, and gave them to the disciples, who in turn gave them to the crowds. They all ate and were satisfied, and they picked up the fragments left over, 12 wicker baskets full. Those who ate were about 5,000 men, not counting women or children. The Gospel of the Lord. The multiplication of the loaves and the fishes is extremely important, and it was extremely important to the Christians in the early church. The multiplication of the loaves and the fishes is the only miracle that's found in all 4 of the Gospels, in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That's how important it was to the community. Even something as spectacular as the raising of Lazarus from the dead is not found in all 4 Gospels. As a matter of fact, it's only found in one Gospel, the Gospel of John. So this miracle is so important that it's actually told 6 times in the Gospels. There are 2 versions of it in Mark. There's 2 versions of it in Matthew, 1 in Luke, 1 in John, 6 total. It's important. Now, one reason the multiplication of the loaves and the fishes is important is very clear. In it, Jesus meets the physical needs of people. That's one of the reasons it's very important. The people in the crowds have been traveling all day long, and they've worked hard to find Jesus. They are desperate, and they've spent the whole day with him. As evening comes on, these poor, vulnerable people on the fringes of society are hungry. Now, overwhelmed with pity and compassion and love, Jesus acts. He feeds thousands and thousands of people through this miracle. There is another reason why this miracle is so important, and it's a little less clear. In it, Jesus begins to prepare his disciples for another miracle. Jesus uses this miracle to teach them about another miracle that's going to be instituted later, called the miracle of the Eucharist. The multiplication of the loaves and fishes foreshadows the Eucharist. The 4 actions that Jesus does in this miracle are highly symbolic. And Matthew describes these 4 actions very carefully and very intentionally. Notice what happens in the story. Jesus takes the bread, he blesses the bread, he breaks the bread, and he gives the bread. Those 4 action verbs are very, very important. Those 4 things are exactly what Jesus does at the Last Supper. On the night before he dies, Jesus does those 4 actions at table. He takes the bread, he blesses the bread, he breaks the bread, and he gives the bread. And these 4 actions are what the priest does at every Mass. In a little while, I will be standing behind the altar that I'm standing in front of right now. And behind that altar, notice what's going to happen. I'm going to take the bread, I'm going to bless the bread, I'm going to break the bread, and I'm going to give the bread in Holy Communion. So, this miracle satisfies the physical needs of the crowd and foreshadows the Eucharist. That's why it's so important. This week, we should follow the example of Jesus Christ. Jesus met the physical needs of people. And we should do that. And one of the ways the church encourages us to do that is by being very, very practical. And we have what's called 7 corporal works of mercy. Things like feeding the hungry, visiting the sick, visiting the imprisoned, burying the dead. So, we should make an effort this week to follow the example of Jesus Christ, who met the physical needs of people. And then we should take one of the 7 corporal works of mercy and put them into practice to follow Christ's example. Okay, just a few announcements of things happening in the parish. As you know, the summer daily Mass schedule has changed. We have an 8:30 Mass every day from Monday to Friday. And then on Saturday, the 8 o'clock service is going to be celebrated at 8:30, so it's all consistent. But on Saturday, it's not going to be a Mass, it's going to be a communion service. So we would encourage people going to the 8 o'clock Mass to continue to go to the 8:30 service on Saturday. Bishop John Kalur from India was here this weekend, and Bishop John is from the state of Kerala, and he was here to tell us about his new diocese that he actually established. And he's asking for our physical support and financial support and also our spiritual support. And then there is a leadership summit called the Global Leadership Summit that's being hosted in a parish, a Catholic, a Protestant church in King of Prussia area called Hope Community Church. And we have about 10 or 12 people from the parish who are going to be going next Friday and Saturday, the 14th and 15th of August. Starts at 9:30 in the morning and it goes to 5:30 each day. If you're interested in joining us for that leadership summit, then just contact the office and Laura or Peggy Ann can give you some information. Thanks a lot, everyone, and have a great week.